What is going on, y'all? Gamers Goon here today with your college football week 4 predictions. My voice ain't really at the best right now. Going through a little bit of a cold, so if I'm not loud or not energetic, I'm sorry for that. But if you haven't already, make sure you go check out the NFL video. I did get the first game of the week wrong, so we're starting off this week on a good note, right? But we're bouncing back here. College football. There was a game last night. Was a blowout. Wasn't going to talk about it anyways on this, so I figured I'd just wait to record this until Friday morning. But Friday, we got a lot of good games here this weekend, and we got two of them starting tonight. First being Syracuse versus Stanford. Syracuse versus Stanford. There are 9.5-point favorites in Syracuse. Now, Syracuse is a 2-0 team. McCord has looked solid for Syracuse. Stanford, a 1-1 team. Played close with TCU week 1. So Stanford, the 9.5 seems about right, but I do think Syracuse will get the win. I don't think they're going to cover that win, but I do think that Stanford is going to keep it within that 1 to 2 possession game here when it comes to Stanford against Syracuse, but we do have Syracuse coming out on top. Next, we got Illinois versus Nebraska. Big game, 8.5-point favorites for Nebraska on the road. Illinois set to prove themselves, hopefully. Obviously, I'm going to be wanting Illinois to win. I'm going to be rooting for them to win, but I'm not going to be picking for them to win. My heart's telling me to pick Illinois. My mind's telling me Nebraska's going to win. 8.5, I think we're going to keep it around that. I think on the road you expect to say maybe around the 10 point range. So I'm going to say Illinois does cover the spread, but they do not beat Nebraska. Nebraska, obviously, one of those teams right now, Raiola, helping them look really, really good. Can you fluster the freshman? Illinois, on the other hand, they've seemingly flipped the script on everything we know about Illinois football. They're not a run-first team anymore. Their best assets are their passing game. Zachary Franklin, Pat Bryant, getting guys involved there. So Luke Altmaier, Illinois, I hope they win on the road, but I don't see it happening. So those are the two Friday night games that we are going to mention. North Texas, Wyoming is 7-point favorites North Texas's way. North Texas, they put up 21 points last week on Texas Tech. Did better than I thought they would. Wyoming, not the best of teams. Lost last week to BYU. Lost to Idaho. They lost to Arizona State. They ain't beat North Texas. North Texas is winning the job there. Not going to really talk about Indiana versus Charlotte, but shout out to Indiana. They're starting to look like maybe they might be a little bit of a force to be reckoned with. I'm going to pick them to win, but we're not going to really talk about that because they should beat Charlotte. Clemson versus NC State. 18.5 favorites for Clemson. NC State 2-1 going into this game, believe it or not. Beat LA Tech last week. Blown out by Tennessee. Beat Western Carolina. Clemson, on the other hand, 1-1. Beat App State. Lost to Georgia. Looked really bad against Georgia. This is a rough one for you. Because Clemson's the ranked team. NC State's not. NC State, I think, might have a little bit of an edge here. They're coming in with the chip on their shoulder. They're coming in as the team with something to prove, whereas Clemson, still ranked in the top 25, even though they're 1-1, did not look good against Georgia. App State, according to what we saw last night, ain't that team. So, I mean, Clemson, are they good? Or are they a little bit of a fluky type of ranking? I'm going to go with NC State. 18.5 for Clemson is a ridiculous number for a team in NC State that came into the season as a top 25 team. I get NC State looked bad against Tennessee, but I guarantee you Clemson would too, because they looked bad against the Georgia team that, guess what, Georgia went and did. They played 1 point away from losing to Kentucky. So this Clemson team, I am not sold, and 18.5 is very, very disrespectful, in my opinion, to NC State. Tulane versus Louisiana. Louisiana coming to this game undefeated, 2-0. They beat Kennesaw State. They beat Grambling State. Tulane, on the other hand, 1-2. Not the greatest of records, but I don't think you could be upset if you're a Tulane fan, right? They obviously won their Southeastern Louisiana game, but they played within a touchdown against Kansas State. They were within 2 possessions of Oklahoma. This is the week that Tulane will get the victory. two really tough opponents. Don't sound the alarm bells. If you're a Tulane fan, Tulane is going to win. 1.5-point favorites, they will clear that. I think they win this game by at least a touchdown. Rice Army should be a decent little game. I don't think we've talked too much about either of these teams yet this season. Rice lost to Houston. They're 1-2. Army, on the other hand, they beat Florida Atlantic, who I could have told you that Florida Atlantic is not very good in my opinion. I got Army winning this game. I did just gut feeling. Do they cover the 7? Probably not. I'm going to go with Army, though. JMU versus North Carolina. 10.5 favorites for North Carolina. North Carolina, they're undefeated. Beat Minnesota, beat Charlotte, beat NC Central. James Madison. Not a team that's putting up points. I mean, they beat Charlotte, which, once again, so did North Carolina. And then they played close against Gardner-Webb. NC State wins that game. They probably clear the spread. 10.5 might be a little bit too low. I think they probably win that game by about 14 to 15, somewhere in that range. At least by 2 touchdowns if you're NC State. Florida versus Mississippi State could be decent. Florida has not looked great. Graham Mertz, I believe, is back with them starting. Mississippi State last week went out and lost to Toledo in shocking fashion. Did not expect that. 2 teams reeling right now. Florida's probably the better team on paper. I'm going to ride with them. Do they clear that 7-point spread? Neither team's really impressed me. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a little bit of a crapshoot and it's like a 14 to 10 type of game. I don't think they clear that 7-point spread. Oh my goodness. Unfortunately, we got to talk about Ohio State because they're a ranked team. They're going to beat Marshall. They're probably going to clear the 39.5. What more do you want me to say? There's nothing I can hype up about that. Houston-Cincinnati could be a decent little one. Houston, not very good, but Cincinnati, not the great. I mean, they're winning, but not super impressive. Not super impressive. And Houston, they're losing. They lost to a UNLV team that, by the way, beat Kansas last week. They played close against an Oklahoma team that, by the way, is ranked. They beat Rice. I think Houston is the better team. I think Houston gets the job done against Cincinnati. Kansas versus West Virginia. West Virginia is the favorites. They are 2-point favorites. Do not let that fool you. Kansas was 2 weeks removed of being a top 20 team in the country. When it rains, it storms. They haven't looked good the last 2 weeks. I expect Kansas to bounce back. I think they're fine. I think they're a good football team. 2-point favorites for West Virginia. Scratch that. I got Kansas winning by 10, 14 points. I think this is going to be a big game for Kansas to bounce back. Oh, Ball State versus Central Michigan is within a touchdown, so we got to talk about it. Central Michigan looked bad last week against Illinois. Not the worst that we've seen against Illinois this season. Ball State, on the other hand, Ball State is a team. They did not score 62-0. They beat Missouri State. Ball State, Central Michigan, a little bit of a crapshoot. We're going to go with Central Michigan. Oh, we got to talk about Iowa State versus Arkansas State. 21-point favorites is Iowa State. Once again, not the greatest. I don't know why you would have a 21-point favorites when this team only won by 18 against North Dakota. Then you look at an Arkansas State team that lost by 10 to Michigan. And I think Michigan's a better team than Iowa State. So Arkansas State will clear the spread. They will play within 21 points, but Iowa State's winning the game. That's just a very favorable spread in my opinion. Utah State versus Temple. Not much to talk about here. I don't think of Temple that highly. 6.5-point favorites is Utah State. I see them clearing that pretty easily. Virginia versus Coastal Carolina, 3.5-point favorites is Virginia. Coastal Carolina, however, is the undefeated team. This is interesting. Virginia, they beat the Wake Forest. Oh, I think I'm going to ride with Coastal Carolina for the upset. I think I'm going to ride with them for the upset, which obviously clears their spread. Southern Miss versus Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State 0-3, a team that for some reason keeps going into games as favorites. They have not proved it. Until they do, Southern Miss wins this game. Miami, Ohio versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame comes in and they dominate this game. 27.5 favorites. They will win big. They won big last week against Purdue. You lose to NIU, you go prove a statement against a capable team in Purdue. I think they're going to do the same thing here against Miami, Ohio. Notre Dame will clear that spread pretty easily. USC 4.5 favorites going in against Michigan. That's a rough one for me. That one's a rough one for me simply because we don't know really what's happening with the QB situation. It's just wiser to pick USC. I don't know if they'll clear the 4.5. So we're going to say USC wins, but they don't cover. Arkansas, Auburn. Auburn should be a good little game there too. Both 2-1 teams. Arkansas coming off a good week. Auburn coming off of a good week. Let's go with Auburn. We're going to go with Auburn to win and clear the spread. Penn State, Kent State. 49-point favorites is Penn State. Now, Penn State have had their struggles this season. They obviously played close against Bowling Green. They need a big statement type of game. Beating the brakes off of Kent State could be that. So we're going to ride with Penn State in that one. LSU versus UCLA. LSU's 21.5 favorites. LSU, we know they can score. UCLA has looked bad this season. They played close against Hawaii. Indiana beat the brakes off them. LSU will win. They will clear the 21.5. LSU, big game ahead for them. Northern Illinois versus Buffalo. Northern Illinois, 13.5 favorites against Buffalo. Buffalo has looked pretty solid. They had the bad loss to Missouri, so that's a little worrisome there. I'm still riding with NIU to win. I don't know if it will clear the spread, though. Louisville versus GT, Georgia Tech. This is a sneaky game here, too, because Louisville hasn't been tested. Jacksonville State, Austin Peay, Georgia Tech, obviously, we know they have been tested a little bit. They ran into Syracuse, played close, beat Georgia State, beat Florida State. I'm going to ride with Georgia Tech for the upset. So, obviously, they're going to clear that spread. Arizona State, Texas Tech, another interesting little one. Texas Tech coming off a good week. Arizona State, undefeated, by the way. Tough test there in Texas State. That's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to ride with Arizona State to get the job done. There. Rutgers versus Virginia Tech. A 3.5-point favorites are Virginia Tech. And that's probably about right. Rutgers, who they played? They played Akron and they played I got Virginia Tech winning that game pretty handily. They'll cover the 3.5. Utah versus Oklahoma State. 1-point favorites is Utah, so no matter what happens, it will get cleared. This is tough. This is tough for me. I think you got to ride with Cam Rising and the experience here in this game, so we're going to ride with Utah. Vandy versus Missouri, 7th-ranked Missouri. 20-point favorites. Vandy, though, 2-1, doing better than what you'd expect out of them this year. Had that Virginia Tech win. Did lose to Georgia State, however. Missouri will win. Is it going to be a 20-point win? I don't think so, though. TCU, SMU, should be a decent little game. TCU, 2-point favorites, and I tend to agree with that. I do think they will get the job done there. Florida State versus Cal, 2.5 favorites for Florida State. I do tend to think that we're going to finally see a Florida State team that looks like what we were told they were, or at least one of these weeks we will. Is it this week? I don't know. So we're going to ride with Florida State to clear their spread of 2.5 and win. Miami, Florida, 17-point favorites against South Florida. Miami looked really good this season so far. I think they'll get the job done, should do it, and clear the spread while they're at it. Toledo versus Western Kentucky. 2.5-point favorites for Toledo. Western Kentucky, on the other hand, they're not a great team, but they're not a horrible team. And I'm riding with Toledo. They're coming off a good week. They'll clear the spread. They will clear the spread. Florida Atlantic versus UConn. That's another crapshoot. Florida Atlantic probably wins this game, but I think they're terrible. They were just really rough to watch. Not a one-possession game here, but Washington Northwestern could be a little interesting. I'm going with Washington. I don't think they'll clear that 12-point spread, though. Tulsa, Louisiana Tech. 3-point spread for LA Tech. I'll ride with LA Tech. Why not? The big game of the weekend, Tennessee, Oklahoma. 7-point favorites are Tennessee. I think they will win, and bigger than the 7. I think they win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. I would be shocked if they don't. Bowling Green versus A&M. 22.5 favorites for A&M. They will win. They will clear that spread. I would be shocked if they didn't. Iowa versus Minnesota. Iowa 2.5 favorites. I think they'll get that done. There. Ole Miss versus Georgia Southern. Ole Miss 35-point favorites. I tend to think they will beat Georgia Southern pretty badly, so we're gonna ride with Ole Miss. Texas versus Louisiana Monroe. Texas 44-point favorites. I think that's around what you expect out of Texas. By the way, shout out to Texas, number 1 in the country now. Texas will get the job done. Baylor and Colorado should be a fun little game. Colorado coming off of a good week that they impressed everybody. Baylor, not the greatest of teams, but they're having a solid little year so far, 2-1. Didn't look bad against Utah. This could be a little bit of a dogfight. I got Colorado coming out on top. Michigan State versus Boston College. Boston College is 6.5 favorites. Michigan State, however, is the undefeated team here. Boston College, though, they played close against Missouri. They had the Florida State win. I think Michigan State, while they're on a good streak, I don't think they have the talent that some of those teams that Boston College has already played and beat. So we're going to ride with Boston College. Oregon State versus Purdue, 4-point favorites for Oregon State. I think Oregon State will clear it. Bad week last week for Oregon State, bad week last week for Purdue. Both teams are going to look to come out with something. And then our last game of the week, we're going to talk about K-State versus BYU. K-State, they just keep finding a way, man. They just keep finding a way. They beat Arizona. I didn't think that was going to happen. BYU undefeated, so good for them. But ultimately, I think K-State, that QB just seems to always find a way. We're going to ride with K-State this week. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you go check out the NFL video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.